welcome the self-proclaimed boundary-pushing, swimming-obsessed, road trip warrior, and voracious consumer of back episodes of Ab Fab, Ashley Danieal Foot.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you. Well. All right, as Matthew McConaughey says. Thank you for that very kind intro, Aura. My secrets are out there. Yes, I want to raise goats on Saturna Island. I should also mention that in addition to all of the things that Aura mentioned, I'm also a former basement DJ. I'll explain that one in a little bit. Many different strands of creativity make up my daily life, but the journey that brought me here is one filled with music, reflection, that's good because that's what we're talking about today, and a lifelong search for the place where my voice truly belonged. As someone deeply involved in the arts and culture sectors in Vancouver, I truly recognize the importance of honoring the histories, cultures, and identities of the Indigenous nations to whom these lands belong. And to expand on the land acknowledgement, at Vancouver Opera, we strive to integrate this recognition. We are committed to collaborating with the nations, not just as a gesture, but as an essential part of how we engage with our city's diverse cultural landscape. I'm fortunate enough to work alongside amazing folks like Wilson Williams of the Squamish Nation, Renai Morisseau, a Cree Salto artist, director, and actor, and Linda Gray, an accomplished author and a member of the Smyson Nation. Together, these leaders help Vancouver Opera create programming that honors Indigenous traditions while fostering a deeper understanding of Indigenous culture among our audience. And it's an ongoing process, and it's one that we continue to find a good way forward. So my basement DJ years were an early sign of my love for storytelling, music, and even connecting with an audience, even if that audience was really just my family. In the basement of our house, because we were the feet, so we lived in the footpad, I transformed a small corner of the basement into a radio studio. Armed with a tape recorder, I would conduct interviews and play music and deliver commentary like I was hosting a CBC radio show. Raised on CBC right here. The thrill of curating that show was absolutely addictive. And little did I know that these homemade broadcasts would fuel a lifelong passion for media and communication. Did anyone ever listen to the CBC show Disc Drive with Jürgen Goff? Anyone? Oh, fantastic. I miss Jürgen to this day. His eclectic blend of classical music, jazz, film scores captured my imagination and expanded my musical horizons. I remember taking a trip over from the island and meeting Jürgen over in Subterranean Studio 20 just across the way and begging him to let me go on the air. He said no. It made me realize that a well-curated playlist to tell a story and connect with listeners was amazing. And these experiences in the basement of the footpad, paired with my growing love for CBC, shaped my creative journey and my understanding of the impact of storytelling, and whether that was through radio, opera, or any other medium. I want to talk about identity, because that seems like a good place to start. Navigating my identity as, and this is big, as a white passing mixed race African Canadian has always been closely connected to my unique beginnings. My paternal grandmother started Toronto's first Black theatre, the Stirring Spoon Collective. And my adoption was the first private adoption in Alberta's history. And my parents were determined that I would always know where my parents came from. They believed in the importance of maintaining a connection to my birth families. And this openness became a cornerstone of how I saw myself. That story is a very long one. It's definitely could fill many speeches and books, and we'll save that for another day. But growing up in small town British Columbia, one that also happened to have one of the largest Indigenous populations in Canada, the Cowetsan tribes, I was surrounded by a complex web of social dynamics that shaped my understanding of race, identity, and privilege. My parents' progressive approach to my adoption later became a model for my sister's adoption 2 years later, reinforcing the value they placed on transparency and connection. So this foundation allowed me to maintain meaningful relations with my birth families, and I say families because there was two, even as I navigated the challenges of growing up in a town filled with contrasts and tensions. On one hand, our town was a close-knit community where everyone knew each other. But on the other hand, it was a place where systemic racism led to marginalization, discrimination, and profound injustice. My sister, who has a darker skin tone than I do, experienced overt forms of racial discrimination in our community. She was regularly asked by folks, hey, my parents were asked, hey, where did you get her? Where's she from? Good for you for doing that. And that felt strange. And indeed, growing up in Cowichan with the added layer of having been adopted and maintaining ties with my birth families profoundly influenced my understandings of identity. It taught me the importance of honoring one's roots and the value of open, honest relationships, a lesson that has continued to shape me and my life and work. And again, living in a town with such a significant Indigenous presence also made me aware of the intersections of race, culture, and identity. The systemic inequalities between different communities in our town were a constant undercurrent, influencing how we interacted with one another and how we understood our place in the world. These inequalities based on racism and socioeconomic power reflected the broader struggle faced by many communities across Canada. Now, through the arts, I found a way to explore these tensions, these themes, and to give voice to the complexities of my own identity. I strive to honor the experiences of those who, like my sister, have had to navigate more overt discrimination, and to recognize my own privilege that comes with being white passing. I often have felt like an outsider, navigating a world where my identity didn't seem to quite fit into the neat categories that seem to define everyone. It was through literature, music, and the arts that I began to piece together a sense of self, of finding fragments of my voice in the stories and poems that resonated with my own life. And I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail. Growing up, I discovered that my voice was a powerful tool. And all of our voices are powerful tools. And it's one that allowed me to express feelings and ideas that I couldn't quite articulate in everyday life. This embarrassing slide shows me singing and gives a glimpse of something that I discovered, how singing gave me a way to connect with emotions and stories that transcended the limitations of my surroundings. However, as I grew older, I began to notice a disjuncture, a strange and sometimes uncomfortable gap between my performance roles and the person I was in everyday life. On stage, I was bold, confident, and expressive. Off stage, I was still finding my way, navigating the complexities of adolescence. In a small town, where standing out often felt more like a burden than a gift. This tension between my artistic self and my everyday self was both a source of confusion and a catalyst for growth. Seeking out queer history and queer stories became important to me as I searched for community. The film Beautiful Thing, if anyone's seen it, which explored a queer relationship in small town England, was formative in my understanding of identity. It showed me that I wasn't alone, that love and connection could flourish even in the most unexpected places. And the incredible music from the Mamas and the Papas in that movie just made it all the better. Writers such as Michael Cunningham, David Levitt, and Virginia Woolf deepened this realization. In their works, I found echoes of my own experiences and the validation that my feelings were shared by others. Michael Cunningham's The Hours, David Levitt's The Lost Language of Cranes, and Virginia Woolf's The Waves offered me a profound sense of connection, demonstrating that I wasn't unconnected or isolated, but part of a larger, vibrant tapestry of queer culture. As a teenager, I remember going to the library and taking out as much queer literature as I could, eager to explore these narratives further. But this exploration was later censored by my family, and these were my first encounters with homophobia and censorship. These experiences shaped my thirst for knowledge and my desire for new and innovative content, and my passion for allowing underrepresented voices and ideas a chance to be heard. Again, I'm reflecting on the strands of creativity that brought me to this place. I remember one particular winter. It was the summer of 1999, and it's the year that a lot of film critics say was one of the greatest in cinema history. I mean, look at it. We had Tarzan and Office Space. No, I'm kidding. We had some other amazing movies like The Matrix, Fight Club, and American Beauty, pushing the boundaries of storytelling. It was also the year that Paul Thomas Anderson released Magnolia, a film that I was determined to see despite some logistical challenges. The problem was Magnolia wasn't showing in my little town, which had one theater. The nearest theater, and I think it's gone now, the nearest theater playing it was over an hour away by bus. And on the day I decided to go, there was a rare snowstorm. But I was determined. I bundled up, I trudged to the bus stop, and set off on what felt like a pilgrimage. The journey was treacherous. The roads were barely visible, and the bus inched along at a snail's pace. But I didn't care. I was driven by the need to experience something that felt larger than life, something that could connect me to a world beyond the rarely snow-covered streets of my small town. When I finally arrived at that theater, which is still there, cold and tired, the experience was everything I hoped it would be. Magnolia was a revelation, a film that explored the intersections of fate, coincidence, and the human condition with a depth and complexity I hadn't ever seen before. Paul Thomas Anderson's ability to capture the nuance of human emotion and his willingness to reflect on the past to illuminate the present struck a chord with me. It was a moment of connection, a reminder that through art, we can find our place in the world, no matter how isolated we might feel. Magnolia shares a deep connection with the world of opera through its grandeur, emotional complexity, and its ability to intertwine multiple overlapping stories. With an extraordinary cast, much like an opera, the film weaves together the lives of its characters in a mosaic of human experience. Stories of love, regret, and redemption unfolding in a dramatic, often overwhelming narrative. One of the most operatic moments in Magnolia comes when the characters, scattered across different locations in LA, all sing along to Amy Mann's haunting song, Wise Up. This collective outpouring of emotion mirrors the way that characters in an opera would unite through an aria, duet, or trio or ensemble, their individual struggles voiced in collective harmony. Magnolia, with its sweeping emotional arcs and climactic moments of catharsis, and it really embodies the intensity of an operatic performance, proving that film, like opera, can stir the soul by confronting the raw and intricate complexities of human existence. And what about those frogs? Do you remember the frogs? Fast forward to today, and I find myself working with people who remind me so much of my younger self. At Vancouver Opera, I have the incredible opportunity to engage with students who are just beginning to discover their own voices. And I work with wonderful teaching artists like Evie, who sang so beautifully this morning, to explore how young folks can discover their passion, whether it's through band, jazz, or choir. These students are exploring what it means to express themselves, to tell their own stories through music. I see in them the same drive I had, to connect with something larger, to find their place in the world through art, something that we can all continue to do. My personal experiences of having intersecting identities have also shaped my understanding of the arts. At times I felt that my relationship to the world has been chaotic because of the multiplicity of lenses through which I saw myself and through which others saw me. Within myself, I have both privileged and marginalized identities, and I've had to grapple with this both personally and professionally. As I journeyed into adulthood, this realization became a guiding principle of my life. I understood that while my artistic voice was essential, it was also important to think about the larger role of the arts in our society. How do we create space where art can thrive? How do we ensure that the arts are accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford to buy the ticket or get the hotel room or go to the concert? How do we build a sustainable art culture in a city as dynamic and ever-changing as Vancouver? And these questions are at the heart of what I do as the Director of Engagement and Civic Practice at Vancouver Opera. But what exactly does civic practice mean? Civic practice is about recognizing the role that the arts can and should play in the broader community. It's about more than just putting on a performance. It's about engaging with the public in meaningful ways. It's about using the arts to address social issues, to foster dialogue, and to bring people together across differences. At its core, civic practice is about the intersection of art and social responsibility. In my role, I work to ensure that Vancouver Opera is not just a major cultural institution in the city, but also a community partner, an organization that listens and reflects the needs and concerns of the people it serves. This involves creating programming that is inclusive, accessible, and relevant to a diverse audience. It's about breaking down barriers to participation, whether those are economic ones, cultural, or geographic, and it's finding innovative ways to bring the arts into the lives of people who might not otherwise have access to them. And one of the ways we do this is through our educational programs like Vancouver Opera in Schools, like Project Opera, where kids make a whole opera from scratch from a book with Evie, she's amazing, or work with Tabby Brasso-Ernst, who runs our Opera Experience program, where teens discover how we put on grand opera, or work with our digital platforms to further amplify their voice. It's not just about teaching youngsters to sing or appreciate music, it's about helping our larger community understand the role of the arts in our society and encouraging critical thinking about the world we inhabit. I really believe that arts have the power to heal, and I'll explain. Jessie Norman was one of the world's greatest sopranos, and she spoke not only through her powerful performances, but also through her deep reflections on life and creativity. In her autobiography, Stand Up Straight and Sing, she shares her belief that creativity equals self-knowledge, and which then becomes a path to wisdom, tolerance, and understanding. Jessie knew that this was a simplistic view, but she also recognized that the act of artistic expression allows individuals like us to see the light within ourselves, a light that we can then therefore think must exist in other folks as well. And by fostering artistic expression, especially with her programs for youth, Jessie Norman believed that they could grow those folks into leaders and healers, guiding the world with love and understanding. And I have a note here to say that you've all seen a version of this light in the work that you do as creative professionals. Civic practice also means looking beyond the traditional boundaries of the arts and finding new ways to connect with people, especially those who've been left out. The arts have a unique ability to reach across barriers, to speak to people in ways that transcend language. This idea was recently beautifully illustrated in the film Sing Sing, which tells the story of a theater program inside a maximum security prison. The film explores how creativity and performance can provide a sense of purpose and connection to individuals who are often forgotten. Sing Sing is also a reminder that art has the power to transform lives in the most unexpected ways and places. It challenges us to think about how we, as artists and cultural leaders, can engage with communities that are often overlooked. At Vancouver Opera, we are beginning to explore initiatives that connect with incarcerated populations, recognizing that the arts can be a powerful tool for rehabilitation. In seeking to draw out unusual programming, I'm often drawn to stories and histories that might otherwise have remained unheard. I want to talk a little bit about Yuval Sharon. Yuval Sharon is a pioneering American director and producer, and he's the leader of Detroit Opera since 2020. He's also the founder of an experimental theater company called The Industry in LA. And he's gained recognition for his innovative, immersive productions challenging traditional opera's boundaries. His work often subverts the status quo, using unconventional spaces and modern themes to create operas that resonate with today's audience. In his production of Invisible Cities, he transformed LA's Union Station into a living, breathing opera stage, blending the everyday with the extraordinary. There are moments that you would not know who is a singer or who is an audience member. Sharon's question, is opera a standard bearer or is it a pallbearer for the status quo? It forces us to confront opera's dual nature. Historically, opera was imagined as, and reflected societal power structures originating in the grand and opulent courts of Italy 400 years ago. And it was a spectacle designed to reinforce social hierarchies. Yet, Yuval Sharon argues that opera is at its most vital when it defies these conventions. We have folks in this room today, we'll talk about in a second, who are doing just that. This perspective aligns with the work of companies like Canada's own Against the Grain Theatre, known for their groundbreaking productions such as Messiah Complex, which reimagined Handel's Messiah by featuring a diverse cast of artists from across our nation, performed in 6 languages and set against the backdrop of our incredible Canadian landscape. Sharon's work, along with companies like Against the Grain, show that opera is most exciting when it dares to push boundaries. Here in Vancouver, Renaissance Opera specializes in blending technology with storytelling, utilizing virtual reality and extended reality to create immersive and boundary-pushing productions. Similarly, Tapestry Opera in Toronto focuses on commissioning and developing new opera works that address social issues. Known for its librettist composer lab, LibLab, Tapestry supports emerging artists and explores new narrative possibilities. Here in Vancouver, we are lucky to have the incredible City Opera Vancouver, and I know their artistic director, Gord Gerard, is here, and he's toiling, pushing those boundaries. We have Sound the Alarm Music Theatre, we have Astrolab Music Theatre, Heroic Opera, Mariposa Opera, and many other indie companies that are celebrating the power of vocal arts. And as for us, minor commercial, our upcoming season is very, very exciting. We are blending classical and contemporary works, starting with Die Fledermaus, Johann Strauss II's witty operetta filled with mistaken identities and Viennese charm. There's more mask pulling than Mission Impossible. There we go. Following this, we have Jonathan Dove's Flight, a modern opera inspired by the true story of a refugee stranded at an airport, exploring, and did I show this to you yet? I did, there we go. Inspired by the true story of a refugee who was stranded and explores themes of isolation, connection, and human resilience with poignant humor. Our associate conductor and music director of Vancouver Opera is here with us today. Les Dalla will be conducting Flight, so that is very exciting. Lastly, we close with the classic opera Madame Butterfly, a timeless and heartbreaking tale of love, betrayal, and cultural conflict. And this diverse season offers something for every operatic taste. So, tickets and information, vancouveropera.ca. You know what to do. As we look to the future of opera, we also want to reflect on Vancouver's opera's history here as one of our major cultural institutions. Since it was founded in 1958, Vancouver Opera has been a cornerstone for this community, presenting both classic and contemporary works that speak to the diverse audiences of our region. We recently produced an opera called Stick Boy, composed by Neil Wiesenthal, with a libretto by poet Shane Koizen, and it delves into the emotional trauma of bullying following a boy's journey through fear, anger, and resilience. And if I'm not mistaken, it was also conducted by Les. Dead Man Walking is composed by Jake Hedgie and explored themes of justice and redemption, telling the story of a nun's relationship with a death row inmate as they confront the implications of crime and forgiveness. And Lillian Alling, composed by John Astasio, is set against the backdrop of early 20th century Canada, chronicling a mysterious woman's epic journey across the continent in search of a lost lover. It's also one of the first operas where we had a helicopter on stage. And in our opera, Nixon in China, I believe we had a 747. So yes, we do big things at Vancouver Opera. I want to talk about the contemporary composers that we look to the future and some of the work that they're doing. Nico Muhly, Missy Mazzoli, Jennifer Higdon, and Laura Kaminsky are leading the way in reimagining the art form for modern audiences. For example, Nico Muhly's opera, Two Boys, delves into the dangers and alienation of the digital age, telling the story of a police investigation into a violent crime involving 2 teenage boys, one of whom manipulates the other through online interactions. In Missy Mazzoli's Breaking the Waves from 2016, based on Lars von Trier's movie of the same name, the emotional and ethical complexities of self-sacrifice and love are explored. In Jennifer Higdon's Cold Mountain, based on the novel by Charles Fraser, a Civil War era story of love plays out with Jennifer Higdon's lush and emotionally charged music. Lastly, Laura Kaminsky's As One is a chamber opera that explores transgender identity and self-discovery. Through the character of Hannah, sung by 2 performers representing different stages of her life, As One offers a deeply personal exploration of gender transition. The opera's accessible format and poignant narrative have made it a significant work in bringing 2 SLGBTQ+ stories to opera stages. Well, In 2018, the City of Vancouver's Making Space for Arts and Culture report was released, and it's a vital call to action for safeguarding the city's cultural future. I have the honor of serving with Mark Bussey on the City of Vancouver's Arts and Culture Advisory Council, and I'm the co-chair. And one of the things that we've been thinking about is with the rising cost of real estate, and I have a note in here to say add humor, but how do you add humor when you're talking about the price of real estate in Vancouver? So the rising cost of real estate threatens the existence of creative spaces. The report urges public, private, and community stakeholders to collaborating to preserve affordable, sustainable venues for artists and cultural organizations. It's every day that I hear of another small venue being bulldozed. And the work that we're doing on the ACAC and that we have encouraged City Council to make very baby steps towards doing, that pressure needs to be kept up. And we need to start thinking about if all those spaces disappear, what's going to happen? And so Culture Shift is something that champions the inclusion of Indigenous voices and marginalized communities, calling for a fairer distribution of resources and a greater representation in Vancouver's arts landscape. Now more than ever, it's crucial that we act to protect the spaces that foster creativity and diversity. As we stand at the crossroads of reflection, I invite you to consider the role that each of us plays in shaping the cultural landscape of our own cities. The stories I've shared today, in great detail, the journey of finding my voice, the profound impact of the arts on our lives, and the transformative power of creativity are all threads in a vast tapestry of what makes a city truly vibrant and alive. A city is more than its buildings. It's more than its streets, even its history. It's the people who inhabit it, the dreams that we dare to dream, and the art that we create that give a city its soul. Reflecting on my own journey from a small town boy searching for connection to a cultural leader in Vancouver, I see how creativity has been the lifeblood that not only sustained me, but also allowed me to contribute something beyond just myself. In the arts, we find the power to challenge the status quo, to break down barriers, and to reimagine what our world can be and who it can be for. Whether it's through opera, or books, or film, or community engagement, each creative act is a step toward building a more inclusive and more beautiful city. We, us, are the architects of this vision, and every artist and every audience member, every individual who believes in the power of culture to transform lives. As I was, getting ready to wrap up here, and I will, I was reminded of the words of Roland Barthes. He says that every text, every creative work is an intersection of other texts, a mosaic of quotations. Our cities too are mosaics, composed of the diverse voices, stories, and dreams of those who live within them. Now, just as I've woven together various influences in my life and work, so too must we all weave together the different threads of our communities to create a tapestry that reflects a shared humanity. And so I'm going to leave you by actually singing. I'm going to sing a song that's a rousing call to all of us who believe in the power of the arts to build something beautiful. Stephen Schwartz's Beautiful City from Godspell is a hymn to the transformative power of creativity and a reminder that we all have a role to play in making our cities places of beauty, love, and connection. We may not reach the ending, but we can start, slowly but truly mending, brick by brick, heart by heart. Now, maybe now, we start learning how. As I sing this song, not speak it, I invite you to reflect on the role you play in this collective effort. Whether your work, you support the arts, or simply you believe in the possibility of a better world, you are part of this beautiful city that we are building together. Start playing the intro now. complexities of our identities and create spaces where everyone's voice can be heard. And now let's envision that city together. A beautiful city. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure y'all got something to talk about now. This is one of our favorite parts of Creative Mornings. To all of you who raise your hand that you are first timers, what happens now is we're going to gather together in small groups by turning our chairs around and having conversations, talking to each other about what did you hear? What did you learn? What are you curious about? Footpad. What would you like to know more about? So, what questions are coming up from you? We're going to take a few minutes and we're going to have a chance to have a conversation. And when we come back, you'll get to ask some questions of Ashley directly. So, off we go. And now we get to ask the questions. So Ash, come on up. I'm going to grab us a microphone and we're going to see who has questions. Go ahead and raise your hand and I will come out. Okay, right in the front. All right. Let's make sure. Got this someplace? Hello? I'm not hearing it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, awesome. Will you please stand up and say your name?
Hi, my name is Kushi. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. The question I have for you, I work with 3 different arts organizations. A few of them have been long-standing in Vancouver and surrounding area. And one thing I'm struggling with is understanding where advocacy stops. Like, why are we not taking stances about bigger problems in the world? None of the organizations I've worked with have put out statements about how they feel about happenings in the world, and that's kind of, I'm a little bit confused about where does our civic responsibility and where does the social justice and advocacy stop for arts organizations specifically?
Thanks for the question. I think it starts with our voices being able to have those honest conversations, being able to take your concerns, to take your questions about whether or why this to talk in an open dialogue. Often a lot of arts orgs have a senior leadership team. I know at Vancouver Opera we meet weekly and we talk about everything from soup to nuts about where things are going. I think that having an open and honest conversation at the senior leadership table is the first step. And if you're still not happy, keep going back and keep sharing.
Hi, my name is Annie. Confession here, I've never been to the opera. So your talk was very inspiring and it dispelled some preconceived ideas I had about opera. And my question to you is, why did both the music performance and your performance make you cry?
Annie, thank you. And Evie thanks you too. Annie, come see me afterwards because you're going to go to the opera this season. I guess one of my favorite things about doing this job is getting to be the ticket fairy. And so the voice unlocks an elemental feeling that brings us home, that reminds us of where we've been and maybe what we've lost. And I think there's so much that we can say in singing that can't be said in words. As I was preparing this talk, I was getting frustrated, and then I realized, wait a second, I've got this secret weapon at the end of the talk that I can just deploy, and everything that I didn't say is going to get said. Thank you, Annie.
All right.
Hello everyone, my name is Brendan, and thank you so much for your talk. I had a good question that I mentioned in our to the point of getting involved and advocating for art spaces and venues and organizations in the city. As someone who's new to Vancouver, I'm curious to be clued into A, the community in the space, but B, how folks like myself can begin to advocate for these spaces. Because even in my short time, I've seen some heartbreakingly close. And so I wanted to ask you what you would suggest in terms of starting points to start advocating as someone new to the city.
Thanks so much for that important question, and welcome to Vancouver. Congratulations, you already did a really good thing by joining us at Creative Mornings this morning. I think that the folks around you are good barometers and folks who can help you get started. If you check Instagram for Creative Mornings and you click who follows, you're going to see a lot of really interesting folks. Check the City of Vancouver Civic Agency's website. Look for the Arts and Culture organization, that's Mark and I. We work with a really wonderful man named Brent Constantine, who is the artistic director of, I can't remember, the Improv, I could be wrong, but he is doing some incredible work for making space for arts and culture. And I think connecting with Brent would be your first call. You can come see me afterwards and I'll connect you.
Thank you.
Also, I should add, at the Vancouver Public Library, I see my dear friend Jorge Amigo, who's the head of cultural programming here. Jorge programs, I want to say over 80, maybe more, events per year that are free, talks that engage on important topics to our community and feature amazing writers and also some opera. So if you want more, check out everything that the VPL is doing. It's a great place to also connect.
Thank you.
I'm Sharon, and I have a question. You talk about getting opera into the community, and I'm wondering what the challenges you face when you think about people coming from abroad, from non-English speaking countries. How do you connect with those communities? Because they're harder.
Yes, thank you for that. What we like to do is realize that there are so many opportunities to connect with different communities by finding singers that could speak the language of the audiences that we're going into and creating tailor-made events that will speak to that. We understand it won't reach everybody, but we can make efforts and attempts to create micro events that will, instead of big, huge grand operas that can welcome community members one step at a time. Even we've had some success with almost like one-to-one opera performances in public parks. And the work that Pacific Opera Victoria is doing in their public parks is allowing disparate groups to get together in new ways. And we try to program a wide variety of different languages into the performances as well.
Wow, that's so great that that's part of your mandate and your vision. Thank you. We have time for one more, and I did see your hand up, so there's no pressure at all, but make this a really good question.
Hi, my name is Ben. I'm hoping you might be able to speak a little bit to the challenge of diversifying the repertoire in opera. For example, today we saw a number of different pieces, but if I remember correctly, every composer was actually white. And on top of that, if you could speak a little bit to the challenges of working with contemporary composers and a more diverse set of composers that will almost necessarily produce music that will be more challenging than traditional opera repertoire.
Thanks, Ben, and I really appreciate you noticing that the songs we picked this morning were by white males. They absolutely were. And as you'll recall in the talk, we are continuing to look for new voices and some of the amazing work that folks like Missy Mazzoli and Jennifer Higdon are doing. And even beyond the world of opera, choreographers like Essie Mensah confronting notions of shadism and colorism and choreography and then uniting that all together. There's not a chart that we follow when we're putting together a season, but it is a tough conversation that we continue to have about how can our organization be sustainable, but also move forward in ways that are meaningful. And that's why we see our role at Vancouver Opera as more than just putting on main stage productions, but amplifying voices across a diversity of channels, whether that's going to be online, whether that's going to be in smaller satellite venues, like the work that we programmed this past November at the Planetarium, composed by the wonderful female composer. It was a work that it was an imagined dialogue between Eleanor of Aquitaine and Hildegard von Bingen, and it was our partnership with Renaissance Opera, and that is also the key, is having partnerships with other organizations. It's also about holding ourselves accountable by taking a hard look at the realities of what we've performed and doing a performance audit, oftentimes looking back at what we've performed and then tracking those numbers as it changes over time. Each opera company and each performing group has different ways of approaching this, but I really appreciate this very important question. It's something that we're still working on and we can do so much better with. So thank you. Hope that got there.
And now the end is near. It's time to, sorry. Thank you so much. And truly, thank you for sharing the passion that really is going on behind the scenes in our city that we don't get to see very often, and the commitment to equality and to diversity and to inclusion that you quite clearly live each and every day. And we really appreciate you reflecting on your life and your journey and sharing that with us. So today we have a member of our volunteer team. David Ives is an artist and he makes engravings based on the themes. And so this is our gift to you, and a very big thank you so much.
Thank you, Aura.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aura. Thank you, Creative Mornings, and thank you.
Yes, that was, thank you.